In your lecture, who are the most significant people you've picked who you think are worth mentioning for different communities and what they've achieved?
I think, as she has rightly said, the society defines who their heroes are, and circumstances create heroes across communities. And in Kenya, if you look across, you'll find in the area of conservation, for example, names that you'd never heard of. Gasara Win, of the Awir community in the Boni Forest. When we now talk about conservation, you don't mention such individuals. You mention those who have been sponsored by some organization. But if you look at the history of a person like Gasara, it is now historically recorded that this was a gentleman who had close association with the forest, with the birds, with the trees. And he was the one who became the custodian of conservation. And if we have history that is properly written, Gasara Win will have a pride of place. And an occasion such as this makes it possible for the president and those who are involved in recognizing heroes to recognize an individual such as that posthumously. But there should also be posthumous recognition of heroes. If you go outside of that, you go to Shiokaraine amongst the Meru. If you ask a young Meru today whether they know Shiokaraine, who lived in the last century and only died, I think, in the 1950s, she was one of the few women amongst the Meru people who questioned the Njuri Nsheke. And he will know that. He questioned the Njuri Nsheke and said, we know that men and women have their pride of place, but women must also be heard. And for that reason only, the Njuri Nsheke did actually ensure that she was appointed as an assistant chief. Such an individual should be recognized posthumously. And lastly, before the others come in, we hear about the Amazon women in the Greek mythology. We hear about Amazon women in Dahomey, in what is present-day Benin. But we forget that amongst the Gabra, in Kenya, in northern Kenya, we had the Mano women who are architects, who are capable of constructing portable houses, and who are capable of therefore ensuring that their pastoralist life was kept alive. These people should be immortalized, and I want to see that when we are writing history books, they have pride of place. Because, as I said a little earlier, the history of a nation is defined by her capacity to recognize her heroes and heroines, and the future of a nation is defined by how far back that nation looks to the past, because the past defines the present defines the future.
But how do we explain such significant people to the younger generation whose time is mostly spent on social media? They may not go back into history, and like she was saying, that their heroes are defined sometimes by notoriety.
You know, Trevor, there is this misconception that the majority of Kenyan young men spend their time on social media. Untrue. It is also true that in urban areas where they have bundles, that is what is happening. This country is largely rural. This country has a situation where young men and women in rural Kenya still interact with history in the classroom. And therefore, it is the duty of educators to ensure that it is in the classroom that they interact. But if I recognize the role of social media, and this is what is happening with this program, that what we are saying now is going to find a place in the social media platforms. And if we educate our young men and women properly, the social media platform is a powerful tool. And why should they do this? Our young men and women are going to interact with Chinese, with Europeans, with Koreans. And if you go to those nations, history and heroes are given great prominence. If you visit those countries, as many of us have, you'll find that museums have sections, as we said, of great poets. We talk about Shakespeare today, but we talk about Fumo Aliongo amongst the Pokomo, for example. We should do that, and we can have them being recognized, because recognition gives people some kind of prominence which is good for the nation. So, the social media platform can be used positively. The fact that we are not using it positively and effectively is not something that should discourage us. In the new education system, what position are we giving to heroes and heroines? And this is critical. I was reading just when I'm talking about heroes and the struggle for independence, which is what we are talking about today. Mora Wangiti amongst the Abagusi people. This was a powerful woman who could foresee the future, who was tortured by the British, who told the British, we are not going to surrender. Do we recognize her when we talk about women heroes? Today, when the president will be delivering his speech, I would expect my president to take me down memory lane without script, to talk to me about the heroes amongst the different nations of this country and about the great men and women in the nations of this country. Will the president do that? No, he will not. Because the scripted speech will only recognize Kenya as if it started existing in 1963.